Hi, it's Carla from What FNC, and today I'm doing a video hop with several other artists. We're doing a Pick Your Passion hop. So if you're interested in checking out their videos, please look for their links below in the description box. My passion happens to be making tumblers, but before I make a tumbler, I'm going to make a stencil using my CO2 laser machine. I do have a side business making these, and if you're interested in having your artwork made into a stencil, check out my Etsy store. You can see I've done a drawing, and I'm currently loading it into the CO2 laser software. If you do decide to have a stencil made, make sure that your drawing has bridges. And if you look at the design that I've made, you can see that I have like white areas surrounding my design. That is to ensure that the areas of the stencil, like the center part of the ribbon, don't fall out, because if you've drawn a complete line, it would fall out of the stencil and not be usable. So right here you can see me loading the design into the software, and I'm going to be tracing around the image. So you can see my image now on the stencil software. And I will be sizing it down to fit on a 4x4-inch stencil, I believe this is. And then we'll be cutting that out on the laser machine here shortly. This software is very user-friendly, and the laser that I have is from Full Spectrum Laser. It's a Muse hobby laser. I'm really enjoying learning how to use that device and how I can use it in my artwork. So at this point, I'm resizing, and I will be sending it to the CO2 laser here shortly. And you will then see the laser the stencil that has been cut out. And I've just hit the button and it is cutting. And in a second, I'm bringing over the stencil that has been cut out. And as you can see, it's now time to work on the tumbler. So here I have a stainless steel tumbler that I have spray painted white. And I'm going to be putting on a epoxy mixture that has some colored mica in it. It's like the same mica that you use for soaps and other products. So I'm applying that to my tumbler first. And I'm not really worrying about coverage. I'm just using it as a background color. And after I completely apply this epoxy onto my tumbler here, we'll be putting on some different color of glitter. So you're going to see that here shortly as I finish up spreading that epoxy all over the cup. You'll notice I go from edge to edge, and I also try to get the bottom of the cup as well. So you can see that in the video here. Getting the last drops out and getting them applied. The one thing about doing it with epoxy, I like getting my glitter on with epoxy. It's my preferred way of applying it. The epoxy that I'm using is from Alumilite. You can pick it up at Michael's, Hobby Lobby, those type of stores. It's called Clearcast. So here's the glitter. It's 3 different colors, 2 of the purples and 1 silver. And I like to apply my glitters on a diagonal because once I've applied all the glitters, I will then apply heat to get them to move around. So I'm starting out first here with a couple sheets of wax paper underneath. That's to catch any of the glitter so that I can reuse it later on. Glitter seems to get everywhere. I'm sure everyone's dealt with that. It's fun to clean up the glitter that spreads everywhere. So as you can see, here's the glitter going on a diagonal. I'm not too worried about how perfectly I apply it because with the epoxy on it, it's going to migrate and move. You'll probably see some of it spreading out here as I'm applying it. And then when I apply the heat, it's going to move even more. And depending upon the direction that I apply the heat, I'll get swirls in my colors and glitter that is applied. So here we're starting with the silver. I noticed here as I'm doing this that I wasn't getting much silver out. So I made the mistake of, you'll see here shortly, taking the cap off and then thinking I was going to tap a little bit, and I tapped a lot. So right now I'm just trying to capture some of the glitter that's fallen off, and I will come back and do a little bit of a repair on that large chunk of silver glitter that I have on the top of the cup because I don't want that much glitter in that area. So I'm going to end up taking a spatula and scraping that off, and then coming back and putting some more of my epoxy on to kind of fill in that area. The one thing I like about epoxy and the tumblers, if you don't like something, you can always, like in this case, remove some of it and try to repair it. Or later on, you can always sand it and apply another coat if needed. The one thing I do like to try to do when I'm doing glitter like this is to keep the glitter as flat as possible on the cup. If the glitter happens to be standing on edge, I find that I end up having to put multiple coats of epoxy on afterwards to kind of get it to lay flat. The finer the glitter, the less issue I have with that. The chunky glitters sometimes will go on sideways or will stand up a little proud on the cup. And you'll have to either use a gloved hand to make them lay flat, or you'll end up having to sand them or apply extra thick coats of epoxy to get a smooth coat afterwards. So I'm applying the third color of glitter on here, and you'll see me shortly get the heat gun out and start to apply some heat to the cup to kind of get some additional movement. You know, I'm seeing a little bit of waves in here, but I want to have some more swirls in it. Just kind of finding some areas that I feel I need some additional glitter on. But once I get the glitter on and the cup cures, it takes, well, I typically leave my cups running overnight, but it typically takes about 6 hours, maybe 7 hours to get the epoxy cured to a level that I could do the next step on. And in this case, I'm going to be using the stencil with a little bit of modeling paste and colored acrylic paint. You could just use acrylic paint and sponge on the stencil. Originally, I was planning on using the modeling paste and applying it directly through the stencil. Having a curved cup and the size of the stencil has an impact on that, and my first attempt using the stencil on the curved cup didn't work too well. So that's why I kind of went the route of using a sponge to apply through the stencil. So I'm at the point now that I think I have enough glitter on the cup, and I'm applying heat in some different areas. I'm not applying a large amount of heat because once that epoxy will start to move, it really moves. Okay, so now my, fast forward a little bit, now my cup has dried and I'm ready to apply the stencil. Applying the stencil with a little bit of the latex or the acrylic paint. In my case, it's acrylic paint mixed with a little bit of modeling paste, so it's a little thicker than normal. And I have chosen to use my stencil in multiple areas on the cup so that it's kind of a random pattern. I really liked these little bugs that I created. Look like little dragonflies with the ribbon. And as you can see, I'm placing them in different areas, and then I'm using the heat gun to kind of get the paint to set before I move on to my next area of applying a stencil. And depending upon the size of the stencil, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to hold, but I'm checking what area I want to apply my stencil in next. And I did plan, and you'll see I've put some of the stencils off the edge of the cup to kind of give a little bit extra design. And I know in some areas it was easier to hold, in other areas it was really difficult. I'm having trouble, like in that area, holding that stencil as evenly as I possibly can. I did try tape. You can see some of the blue tape around. Didn't find that worked very well on this cup to hold the stencil in place. But I found that once I did it, if I just let it go, the stencil popped up, and I was able to get it off cleanly. And I'm really liking this little design. I think it's kind of a cute cup. Hope you're liking it as well. So once I've finished with, I found this one area that had a little bit too much paste on it. Once I finish with getting my dragonflies on, I typically will write my name of the company on the bottom with the year, just so that I know when I made a specific cup. And I will then also put on a final coat of epoxy. So I'm still looking here where I'm going to apply extra ones, trying to decide where they need to go. Here's one that's going to go off the edge on the bottom. I was having to watch out to make sure I didn't inadvertently mar up one of the other designs on the cup. So you can see me moving it around and attempting to tape. The struggle is real here. The one thing that, if you do see some of my Instagram pictures of different cups that I'm making, I tend to post more pictures on Instagram than I necessarily do videos. I'm trying to be better at making videos and putting them up. I do try to use different medias all the time and experiment with different ways of making cups. I recently did one using aluminum foil that I really loved, and I've got a video that I'm about to put up on that one. So you'll have to look out for that video. Using alcohol inks and aluminum foil really made an interesting cup. Yep, so I think I'm pretty much done. Here's where I'm going to be putting on the name on the bottom of my cup. I either use a paint pen, or I sometimes will use a Sharpie, depending upon if what color I want to use to stand out. And as you can see, I always put the year as well. I try to do designs that are unique to my business. I would prefer not to copy other artists' designs, but sometimes I'll take some inspiration from other individuals. For example, the dragonfly design, part of it I got from a tattoo design, and then I embellished heavily on the design to make it my own, putting extra hearts in the center of the dragonflies. At this point, I'm applying the final coat of epoxy. So you can see I've mixed up my two-part epoxy, stirred it really well, and made sure it's clear so that there's no bubbles in it. I like to apply with the gloved hand, and I will spread it out, usually going from side to side, and I do go up and over the edge of the cup. I don't worry if I've got epoxy that has gone to the inside of my cup. I will use an X-Acto knife to cut any epoxy that is up over the top edge off to clean the inside of the cup, and then of course clean it really well. The epoxy is food grade, so it has been tested for food grade, although I don't want any epoxy on the inside of my cup. And once you've done these cups, they are not dishwasher safe. The cup themselves, if you buy them, they do not recommend for them to be washed in the dishwasher anyway. But with the epoxy, the heat would impact the quality of the epoxy over time. So here I've cut around the top edge, and I'm now peeling out the epoxy that was inside the cup, and just checking around. I might have a little bit of paint that when I scrub out the inside of the cup will come off. But I just make sure I have a clean edge, and cup is ready to go. So I hope you've enjoyed my passion for tumbler making. Please check out the other artists in the hop to see their passion for Pick Your Passion this month. And share, and subscribe.